Welcome to our podcast. This is another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego, with video production and studio provided by MaxLux Media, sponsored by Dorada Nutrition, with your host being myself, Steve Wire, a freelance reporter. This podcast is dedicated to fostering quality dialogue surrounding all things local policy related in North County, San Diego. Join us weekly as we interview political leaders, analysts, professionals, and community members on issues ranging from homelessness to housing density to elections. So, I'm really excited about today. We have SG Blaise on, and you're a local author, and I wanted to talk about some of the books that you've recently released, but also some of the upcoming works that you're also working on. Just first, a little bit of intro. SG Blaise was born in Hungary, under the Soviet Union, migrated to California with your family. You wrote your first short story at age 10 and then developed a love for reading later on and picked up a recommended book from your dad. So in 2012, that inspired the idea for your own book. During a road trip, you dedicated some time to writing and produced about 150 pages. You attended some workshops and then engaged editors and publishing consultants for several years to publish a manuscript for publication. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, as a fellow writer myself and someone who loves writing, did your love for writing, did your passion for writing come at a young age, or did it develop later on in life, or where did that come from, and how did you get to where you are now writing books?
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah.
My love of writing definitely comes from reading and from the way that I grew up during the Soviet oppression, and Hollywood movies were largely forbidden at that time. So when they premiered in the theater, if you missed it, that was it. And my dad really didn't like that because I was 1 year old when Star Wars came to Hungary. So he really wanted his children to experience, the Star Wars experience. So he smuggled them in. He used his own voice to translate and dub the movie so we could have Sunday movie nights so his family could watch Star Wars, Rocky, Indiana Jones, The Last Starfighter, you name it. We had a movie night every Sunday.
Wow. Okay. That's wonderful. I mean, I had a movie night about once a week. That was all we got. We weren't really allowed to do the whole movie video game thing growing up, so I definitely relate to you there. But I wanted to ask, also, when you were in Hungary under the Soviet Union, and then as you moved to the United States eventually, what were some of the influences to your writing that sort of carry with you today from your childhood? Maybe books that you were exposed to, works that you were exposed to, or maybe cinema or that sort of thing.
When I first came to the U.S. in '99. First of all, I realized that I don't speak the language. I didn't speak the language. Okay. Even though I had 12 years of passive English knowledge, I couldn't say a single word. Okay. So I dove into reading because I knew that's going to be my best bet to learn the language fast and to have caption running on the TV. So the first book series that I checked out from a bookstore was the L.M. Montgomery Anne of Green Gables. And then I discovered Robert Jordan. Okay. And the Wheel of Time series. And that was a 1,000-page book, and it was just beautiful world building, sci-fi fantasy, and I just kept reading everything I could get my hands on, urban fantasy, paranormal fantasy, everything, right? And I tried a couple of times see how, my English was. I tried to enter a short story competition. Didn't work out because everything I wrote, my husband had to basically redline and then use his own words. So it was like two authors writing one thing. So the time for me to start writing was 2013. Okay. And that's because of the dream I had in 2012 during a cross-country road trip. Yeah. And that's what started me on this journey.
Tell us about that road trip. What happened that was so inspirational to you?
We were in Austria. And I woke up feeling jet-lagged. And I had this dream that was so powerful and so amazing that I knew I had to write it down. So I grabbed my phone, it's pitch dark in the room, and the only light is coming from my phone, and I'm typing it in, and it just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring. And next thing I know, it's book 2, book 3, book 4, and I had this whole series, right? So that's what started the Last Lumenian saga. Obviously, I spent time to chisel and polish the storyline, but that dream was the one that got me on writing sci-fi fantasy.
Sure, so let's talk about the book. For people who aren't familiar with it, who haven't read it, can you tell us a bit about well, you've talked about what inspired the book, but can you tell us a bit about the themes in the book itself?
Absolutely.
Sort of the general plot, that sort of thing?
It's a coming-of-age story.
Yeah.
So the Last Lumenian is about a 19-year-old sassy princess who must defeat the dark god before he finds her, the Last Lumenian. So we have the coming-of-age story. She's trying to find her place. Where does she belong? We're dealing with family issues. She lost her mom when she was 5. We're dealing with, love, true love. There's a bit of a love triangle in the first book. Who's she gonna pick? The person who wants to protect her, or the person who supports her to go out of her comfort zone and learn and be bigger, right? Mm-hmm. To do more things. So there's a lot of themes that each book touches on, and I like to mix genres in my books. So this one is sci-fi, fantasy, action, adventure with a little bit of romance. The second book is more action adventure, and the third one has thriller elements on top of the sci-fi and action adventure. And there's always humor in the books because you gotta enjoy what you read.
You have to, absolutely. So was the character and sort of the storyline influenced by elements of your own upbringing, elements of your own sort of coming of age, or was this like sort of a separate story that wasn't really based off of you?
There was a lot of influence from my childhood because when I was going to school, I would go by these ancient Roman ruins, and then I would look up and there would be the Buddha castle where kings and emperors lived. So I was always surrounded very rich history. And don't forget the mineral bath, place where the Turks built during their 150-year occupation.
Yeah.
So I've always had this amazing historical richness to the country, and the characters basically come from the experience of people I met. It's not a single person, it's everyone I've met throughout my life, and there's a lot of me in it, which I didn't realize until my friends pointed it out that some of the characters sound a little bit like me. Who knew?
Sure. So one thing, I haven't been to Hungary, full disclosure, but I know people who have been. One thing I know about Hungary is that the culture and, everything about the country, the culture, the language, everything is so unique. There's nothing like it. Can you tell us a bit about just the Hungarian culture as far as how that influenced your writing and how that's influencing your current and some of your upcoming novels?
Thank you, Steve. It's an amazing culture. We have an historian who calls 1,000 years of victory in defeat. We always had rebellions, but we never won them. However, we always outlasted our oppressors. So we're rebellious. We live large. We enjoy food, music, and just company and community. It's a wonderful culture, and it definitely, inspired me. And I try to infuse my books with that richness, and oh gosh, I love my country, but I love being in America.
Sure, no, that's fair. Have you been back to Hungary since the end of the Soviet era?
I've been back in 2000. I left the country in 2001.
Okay.
And to move to Boston, Massachusetts, actually.
Boston, okay.
And then we went back in 2012.
Oh, 2012.
And just as we were planning a 2020 trip,
yeah, well, I know what happened in 2020.
Pandemic happened,
yeah.
and
sure. But do you, like, as far as like the main character in the book and the characters in the books, like, do you like personally see yourself in any of these characters? Are they based on any like buddy or any place in your life or that sort of thing? Or like, how did you come up with the characters and the plot for the story?
I see a lot of myself in these characters and even in this whole story, because one of the big quests in the series is to find balance.
Sure.
And just as my main hero is trying to fight for that balance, I'm fighting balance in my whole life, and these characters, they come from dreams. They come from, I need a character who can, be an opponent and be an obstacle for my hero. So it's a combination of organically developing them as I'm developing the story, and also characters that I dreamed up right from the beginning. Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I should have highlighted earlier, but I don't want to miss it, is the fact that you've won this award.
Thank you.
And for people who aren't clear, the Firebird Book Award of 2023, and I want you to talk a bit about just the process, that process, like when you found out you had won the award, sort of like what that meant to you, and sort of just how significant that was to your work.
It was amazing. It was a shock. every time an award comes in, I'm always floored. I can't believe how awesome it is to have this honor, to receive these honors and wins. And the 2023 Firebird Award was phenomenal. They have a lot of applicants, to be the book that they chose. To have that book is just amazing. And also the 2022 Chanticleer International Book Award. This book took the grand prize for sci-fi category.
Okay, that I didn't know. So. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask you, like, as far as the book itself, obviously, acclaimed book, awards, but for people who maybe don't, typically read this kind of book, like, where would you sort of place it as terms of, entry-level reading, like advanced, like sort of. You get what I'm saying? Like, what kind of level is this book at? Like, what kind of audience is it written for?
It's PG-13.
Okay.
I kept it clean because I'm hoping that, teens from 13 to 14 can enjoy the books. And again, this is that Star Wars influence that when I watched that movie, I think I must have been 9 or 10 years old, right? It was clean enough that my dad didn't have to tell me, turn away, it's too much, don't watch it. So that was my goal. And also I wrote this book because my son doesn't like reading. So I said, I'm gonna create something vivid and cinematic that you can't put down. I almost succeeded, but clean language, and I like to say no cliffhangers. I don't like cliffhangers. Okay. Every book wraps up, but you do get teasers of the next book. Okay. And this is my Star Wars meets The Lord of the Rings meets Princess Bride storyline. So if you enjoyed those, you might enjoy this book series.
Is it safe to say that, Tolkien and those kinds of authors are influences of yours?
Very much, very much. The rich world building is just phenomenal. To go to a different world, to see how that world affects the heroes, to have magic, to have gods, to have these creatures that are obstacles in your way. What do you do? Who's the real monster, right? How do you create a community? How do you become the leader, the hero you should be? Which, by the way, I hope when you read this book, everyone will feel that you don't have to be perfect to be the hero of your own life, because I'm not perfect.
Sure, absolutely. Like, and on that note, like, so as far as, human imperfection and that sort of thing, like, what do you, and I know you talked about how it's a coming of age story, but not to spoil the book, but like, are there certain themes and ideas that you try to have come across during the course of the series, like certain, I don't want to say like an agenda, but like just sort of like certain themes that should come across clearly to readers, and like what does that look like to you?
In the first book, she definitely deals with survivor guilt.
Survivor guilt, okay.
And it manifests in a way that I can't tell you because that's spoiler, but it manifests in a way that she needs to overcome. And that's something that, people who experience loss and grief can have that, right? In the second book, she has to learn that she's stronger than she believes, right? And in the third book, she has to learn that, she is the fresh voice that helps, others to get a different perspective, right? So just because she's new and she's unexperienced doesn't mean she doesn't have the space and the right to say something that might help others to get perspective and help change maybe a society's viewpoint. Right? So I love exploring these themes that you could experience in your own life, one way or another. And maybe it inspires you to take a chance to go follow your dream and to go for your goal.
Sure, yeah. It's interesting you mentioned survivor guilt. I mean, I think everybody in this room and everybody who's following this show has probably experienced loss at some point in their life. And what, if you don't mind me asking, like what particular maybe experience or background sort of inspired that point of view?
My dad died when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
And we didn't know that he was terminally ill.
Okay.
In Hungary, they don't always tell you that that's something that's happening to you. So this whole year that he was sick felt like it just, you know, kept getting worse, and we didn't know what was happening. And you really don't know that's going to be the end. And when it happened, it was a shock. And I remember my dad, he always wanted me to read books. And I fought back, tooth and nail. I didn't like reading. Mm-hmm. So when he passed away, the following day, I went to his bookshelf. I took the book that he showed me, and I read it by the bookshelf, standing there. It was P.J. Howard, the 16-karat gold car. It's a wonderful book, and it's a lot of humor. I think I got my humor from that writer, by the way. I read every one of his books. And so I read this book standing by the bookcase, and then I kept pulling the next one and the next one, and I read everything he had on his bookshelf. And then I started to learn about him that, you know, these books didn't just came from him from a bookstore. They came from libraries. He went to buy these books that were on their last leg. And many of them were probably not something that the Soviets would like you to read. So I read a lot of political books. I read a lot of books that were way beyond, you know, 12, 13-year-olds what should read. And I just wish I could have asked questions of my dad. But reading and watching the movies, I feel like that's what allows me to be close to him. You know?
I like that. You know, one thing I wanted to ask you is, and I feel like I should have led with this, but you know, the fact that you were born under the Soviet regime, in a society where, you know, you weren't necessarily allowed to read anything you wanted to, certain things were censored. It's interesting because I've recently been, you know, following the news, and you know, people are talking about, you know, limiting access to certain books or certain books being banned and that sort of thing. And like, as an author and as someone who grew up under a society of censorship, do you have an opinion about the censoring of books and the banning of books and that sort of thing?
It's definitely interesting to see what's happening, and not in a nice way. I'm getting chills because oppression can come in many forms. I don't want to get too political, but I love America because it's a land of opportunity and freedom. And that's something I didn't experience growing up. To me, when I leave the house, I don't just have the be careful, you know, look around and be cautious, but I have a stronger fear because there was no real safety. So when I hear banning books, I always think, do we have to ban books because we don't want everyone to read? Or should we just say, you know, I don't want my child to read? And there is a difference of how we approach this topic. And I like asking questions. You know, what else can we do? You know, is this, why do you want to ban this book, right? What's so scary about it? I don't have the answers.
Do you think like any book should be banned, like Mein Kampf or something like that, or no?
I have a strong opinion on that book, and it definitely should be banned.
Okay.
Any book that hates speech and goes against a group of people for any reason, discriminating and proposing hate speech and hate in general is not something we should sponsor.
Sure. And I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not, but because you do come from the Eastern European background, sort of the elephant in the room is the fact that there's a huge conflict going on right there, and sort of, you know, Russia and Putin sort of seeing itself as the successor to the USSR, you know, trying to retake Ukraine, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not asking you to be an expert on this, but just do you, as somebody who grew up in that regime and grew up in that era, sort of worry about just the state of the world and sort of the way that politics are like sort of forming in that region and the way that that's going?
It's definitely worrisome to watch the news these days, and it's hard to be creative when you have fear and worry. I was shocked, to be honest, and I wish the best for the Ukrainians. I hope there will be some sort of resolution soon, because it's been going on very, very long.
Yeah, over a year now.
Over a year now, and I can't imagine what they go through. We never had it that bad. Granted, we had the '56 revolution.
Yeah.
And afterwards, it wasn't fun to be in Hungary, and there was all kinds of repercussion. But this is very scary to watch on TV.
Sure. Do you feel like just the things that you experienced in USSR and sort of that legacy influences any of your writing?
I think it sneaks into my books, whether I want it or not.
Sure.
And almost every book, there is some form of oppression that my hero fights.
Mm-hmm.
And every book ends with a change to that oppressive power to society. And I love sci-fi fantasy because it's a genre that allows us writers to magnify certain societal issues. We don't have to deliver the solution, but just magnify that this is something that be aware. Mm-hmm. And you know, bring community, because readers are a community themselves. And when you have community, you talk about things, you start asking questions, you think logically, you can fight fear, because we cannot think logically when we're worried. And that is the most important thing, is to create community where you can talk and have conversations.
Yeah, I mean, with everything going on in the world, as you talked about, there's a lot to be anxious about. How do you, if you don't mind asking, like personally, how do you like sort of block out the noise, you know, block out the worries and that sort of thing, and focus on the task at hand?
I definitely have to block out the noise.
Yeah.
And what I do is I just stop reading the news. Yeah. So there are days, sometimes weeks, when I don't go and don't check on any of the news. I don't let my phone show me any headlights, because then I can't work. I can't get into that creative mode. And so I'll definitely have breaks from real life.
Hey there, San Diego. If you're on the hunt for a way to enhance your health, I have a great recommendation for you. Dorado Nutrition is a company that's all about helping people live their best lives through top-notch American-made supplements. Their expert team has crafted products to support a variety of health needs, from weight management to muscle building and more. And with ingredients like Vidosia agrestis and Tongkat Ali, praised by a well-known neurobiologist seen on the Joe Rogan podcast, these supplements could be just what you need to reach your health goals. And for a limited time, you can get 25% off your purchase by using promo code SD2023 at checkout. So if you're looking for a way to improve your health, Dorado Nutrition might just be the solution you need. When do you find yourself most creative? Is it in a particular space? Is it in a particular headspace? Like at a particular time of the day? Like how do you become creative? Because like for me, I know, like full disclosure to everyone watching this, like I've tried to write books myself. And I always feel like I reach a point where the creativity runs out, the discipline runs out, the ideas dry up, and I just don't know how to keep going. Mm-hmm. And like, what is it for you that fosters that creativity? Like, where do you find your happy place?
It's a great question, Steve. It's so interesting. When I was younger, I didn't have ideas, right? I didn't know where the ideas come from. Now I cannot stop having ideas. I have so many ideas. Someone please clone me, because it's gonna be years and years to write these books, decades even.
We'll work on that.
It's, you train your brain, right? You start writing, and the first book, it's how do you put together a book, right? You start figuring things out. How do you use your tools, what's available? And with the next book, it's easier. With the next book, it's easier. The fourth book I wrote in 19 days. And that's because 19 days. I figure out how to put it together. I do spend 4 months on notes, so don't get me, you know, don't misunderstand me. There's a lot of work that goes in, but because of all that work, I can just let the idea flow. And greatest advice I heard is writing prompts. Because when you do writing prompts, you set a timer, you get a random sentence, and then go. So now I don't have fear from the blank page, because I did so many of these writing prompts. Many of them actually turned it to be a scene in a book. That's how I got the beginning and ending of book 4, believe it or not. Completely random sentence. My husband picked up this prompt book, opened it at a random spot, read that, and that's book 4's beginning.
Sure.
So that's how I train my brain to let the ideas flow. Don't put a stop on it.
So you've already finished the 4th book?
Yes.
Okay, and it's coming out in December?
This December.
December, okay. Without spoiling the storyline, can you give us any hints as to how this will conclude the story or further the story and keep the progression going?
This definitely furthers the story, and this is with a different character. Her name is Glenna. She's a healer who has been infected with corruption, and now she must seek her arch nemesis, the mages, to help get rid of this corruption that's killing her. Obviously, it's not gonna go easy and well for her. And I love this book. It was a lot of fun to write. There's more romance in it. It's action adventure and sci-fi fantasy as usual, but there's more romance in it. And it's only book 4 out of 10 to 13 books. So there is still a lot more to go, and it's a very important book because this will bleed into book 5. I cannot tell you how.
Okay.
You have to read the series,
Okay.
but
yeah.
Hope you enjoy it.
So I'm curious, like something you mentioned is like this theme of sort of the corruption of the character and having to seek out the help of your arch nemesis. There's something interesting about having to ask someone who's traditionally your enemy for help. I feel like that comes from an experience you had or something you've observed in the world. Can you tell us more about that?
I don't know if it's a specific experience, Steve, per se, but it's interesting because I learn more as I'm getting older that nothing is black and white. It's not just yes or no, there is a maybe. And my personality is definitely not the maybe. I'm the yes or no, 0 to 100. So when I wrote the 4th book, something happened. It was really amazing to see this character who's very much like in that mindset of this is the way, right? No other options. To go and experience something where she has to change her mindset. She has to get perspective and understanding that you might not be right about how you approach your life. There are other ways, and so she grows tremendously by the end of that book by learning that there is more to life, and you have to have that flexibility. Again, balance. You can't just go yes or no. There is maybe.
Is that like something that's personally important to you in terms of this theme of like balance in life and sort of, because I'll tell you, like that's sort of the way I was raised, was just, you know, balance, like moderation. That was like hugely emphasized in my own upbringing. Was that something that was big for you?
It was not part of my upbringing, believe it or not. It's something I learned as I came to America, and you know, I'm a big believer of you know, self-help and reading books and psychology, and I'm a huge fan of pop psychology. So as I started to look into that for the characters only, I started to realize how important it is to use these principles for myself. Because I have to learn to be a better person. That's very important in life, to have open mind, to grow. And again, have that balance, because we need balance in our life. And then I started to look outside my life, and I started to see we need balance everywhere. You know, we need balance in our diet, we need balance in our politics, we need balance how we approach life. So it really became very important to me. It's self-growth, right? You have to grow and become a better person, and frankly, that's what the whole book is about, is to be the hero, to be a better person at the end of the day.
What, in your opinion, like in terms of being a hero, being a better person, like, what like sort of what does that look like for you? I mean, like what does the hero, what sort of form does the hero take? Like what sort of path does the hero have to take to do the right thing?
There's a lot of spoilers, so I'm going to try to answer your question in a generic way.
In a general way, yeah.
I love the question. So I definitely challenge my hero, who, by the way, have claustrophobia-induced panic attacks. Okay. So she deals with a bit of a mental issues. And
wouldn't do well on the Titanic's submersible.
Probably not. Yeah. But I wanted to portray a person who is realistic, you know, and she doesn't let this stop her. So I think it's important for her to be challenged and to learn and to grow and to keep that open mind. And every obstacle she comes across, she learns that what she believed as you know, the only right way to approach living is not true anymore. There are other options. There's always more solutions. She just didn't think of it. So I'm trying to show this growth of how, when she looks at a problem, you know, that's affecting her, but it's also affecting, for example, a society, how can she help herself and then help that society? And that's my goal, is to create something inspiring, to create something better, and the whole book series will create a community at the end. It's a very special reason for me to have this series, to have the female myth. It's not just the male myth, it's the female myth.
What do you mean by that? Like,
there is a difference. When you read the, you know, stories where the hero is male, they usually tend to go, attack, kill, and then win. when you have the female myth, and I might be wrong about this because I'm still learning, usually her approach is to overcome obstacles, but also create community and growth. And I'd like to explore that. How does this look like in this series with these characters, these problems? And, you know, we have the two gods, the arch-gods who are fighting, the good and evil. Guess what? They're not as clear-cut. You know, the good might not be as good as she wants you to believe, and the evil might not be as evil as you think he is, right? So we're starting to have this moral gray area and explore that. So it's very fun to write this series so far.
It sounds fun. Now, I want to ask you, like, this is like a pretty straightforward question, but I think, like, when it comes to writing, you know, people write for different reasons. You know, some people write because, you know, Hemingway wrote because, you know, he couldn't do anything else. You know, he's just addicted to it. You know, he couldn't do anything but write or drink or whatever he was doing. But, I mean, everybody writes for a different reason, and I'm just curious, like, I know that your upbringing and, you know, the fact that your father wanted you to read was important, but fundamentally, like, for you, like, why do you write?
It's a great question. I write because writing is not what I do, it's who I am. I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. I love entertaining people. I love that excitement I can bring to your life that helps you to escape reality. Reality is not getting better, it's getting quite hard to handle these days, right? So to give you that escape to that fun, that's what I experienced at 9 or 7 or whatever I was when I watched that Star Wars movie, and it was powerful. My imagination was flying, and I just couldn't stop thinking about the characters, the world, what would happen, what's gonna be the next story. That's what I'd like to do. I would like to give you, the readers, my fans, this excitement and fun and feeling so that they can feel better and recharge. It's so hard to do that these days.
It is. When you meet with fans, when you engage with people who read your work, what are some of the reactions that you get? What is it like engaging with your fans?
It's the best part of my career. Because of the pandemic, I didn't have that chance in 2020 and 2021. Last year, we did LA Comic-Con. And I was sitting on needles to meet the fans. We had a booth at we decorated, we did the giveaway swag, talked about the books. It was an unbelievable experience. I couldn't sleep. I had butterflies in my stomach. And when I talked to people, their eyes lit up, right? I told them this is Star Wars meets The Lord of the Rings meets Princess Bride. And their eyes lit up and they're like, please tell me more. And then I shared some of the characters. I pointed at the character art and they couldn't get enough. They kept asking when the movie is coming out. I'm like, from your mouth to God's ear, please.
Yeah, really, really. What do you hope to do in the future with this series? I mean, obviously, you know, you want to finish the series and you want to, you know, finish it strong. But like, how do you you've accomplished so much already? Like, where does your writing career sort of go from here?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I would love to develop this series and the 7 Galaxy world into a multimedia franchise. I'm hoping to do comic books, tabletop RPG, games, you name it, we'll have it.
TV, movies?
TV, movies, anything and everything, right? Okay. The sky is the limit. And I'm very excited. This world has so much to give. We can go from planets to galaxies. We can go past the, you know, future, origin stories. I can't wait to show everything.
Yeah. It's interesting because to come up with like a world like that where, you know, the sky is the limit, you have to have quite the imagination. Where, like, I remember as a kid, I had quite the imagination myself. And did you, when you were younger, did you like always have this sort of sky is the limit mentality, or did that sort of like come on like later in life? Like, how did that like sort of transcend for you?
So the sky is the limit came later, but I always had big imagination. There are all these home videos my dad took where I was pretending to be a princess or an actress or something. And so I think I always had the imagination. But the more I do the writing, the better and easier my imagination comes, to the point that the other day I had lucid dreaming. I had this action movie as a dream, and as I'm dreaming it, suddenly I became the author and I'm pulled back. It's still playing in front of me, but now I'm also seeing the words and I'm editing the words because this is the backstory and this is the hero and this is gonna be book one in another series. And then I told myself, you better wake up and write it down. And I woke up at 3:30. No, I didn't write it down, but I did wake up.
Because I've had lucid dreams before, and I really regret not writing down afterwards because it's quite an experience.
It's amazing. This is the third time, if I count the first dream, the nightmare at 10. This is the third time when I took control of the dream. And I didn't plan to do this, but it just happened. And the one previously was so interesting because I was telling my son that these two books, these are very special. There's going to be a huge twist here, and just you wait. And then I told myself, wake up, write it down. And I did write it down. That one I did.
Okay,
that one
good.
I knew it's going to be important. The second one was more of a backstory of a world, which I still remember.
Okay.
But I always get the beginning of the story and the ending.
Yeah.
And when I have that, I know that's a book. If I have the backstory, I know I have a lot of work to do because who's the hero? What's going to be the storyline? What's going to be the character arc? So it's very interesting how that works.
Do dreams sort of is like the themes that you get from your own dreams, and it sounds like that sort of reinforces your work, that like bleeds into this series specifically? Is that true?
Very much. My dreams definitely affect it. And, you know, they really say that when you dream, it's you processing what happened to you, your experiences, maybe something stressful happened, right? So I do believe that dreams has a lot of power. And that power is something we can harness, you know, use it as inspiration, starting point for another story, or just having fun and enjoy it when it happens in color.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, like maybe this is like obvious to anybody, but to me it's just amazing because, I mean, you were born in a foreign country, you're born in Hungary, English is not your first language, and now you're a successful award-winning author in an English language series. How do you do what you do?
You are very kind, Steve. Thank you. It means a lot coming from you. I just do day by day, one story at a time. I love what I do. This is my dream come true. I always wanted to do this, and to be able to do it, I cannot tell you how amazing that feels. I love what I'm doing. I'm happy to get to do this. I'm happy to share this with you, with my fans, with my family. I'm getting great support from my family. My son, he was 8 when we started this whole process, so he listened to us reading it out loud, and then he would giggle when there was a joke in the book. Sure. And I'm addicted to this. If I don't write, I physically get withdrawals.
It's like me in the gym. So I'm curious, like, what, like, do you like see yourself eventually? You said you wanted to start a multimedia franchise at some point. Do you sort of see this as being something that you want? You're like a legacy for you. Like, is that kind of like what you're going with this? Is like that's sort of you're going to leave a legacy of like this series is sort of going to define your life? Are you going to maybe write other books completely unrelated, or like what's sort of the plan like after this franchise is over?
I never looked at this as a legacy per se. I looked at it as all the stories that are waiting to be told.
Yeah.
And I love that part. If I could write every day, all day, that's what I would do. Give me a pen and paper and I'm a happy camper. So for me, the biggest goal is to tell as many stories. I'm probably going to be on my dying bed, still writing, the end, now I can go. Yeah. That's what I want to do. I'm not going to retire. Yeah. I just want to keep telling these stories because there are so many to tell, so many origins, so many series. In book one, you're going to get little crumbs of a couple of ideas already. When you read the first book, you're like, oh, she's going to do that series. Oh, yeah, I will. So every book you read, you're going to get these little nuggets of, oh, that's a possibility for a series. Sure. I put it in there. So when they all on the table, you know how this whole word like puzzles came together organically.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned like writing on your dying bed and not retiring, because I feel like all the great authors never really retire. They always keep writing. Like Mark Twain, Dostoevsky, you name it, like Hemingway, like they all like if you look at like the course of their lives, like they were all like writing till the end. And it sounds like you intend to do just that.
Oh,
You're
absolutely.
not going to stop anytime soon.
Oh, please, no one can stop me. Literally, you have to take the pen out of my hand. When we're at the festivals...
But you still find a way.
Oh, I was still like my blood, like, come on.
Yeah.
But even at the festivals, my husband and my amazing assistant, Melissa, they literally have to shout at me, sit down, eat, stop waving. Because I just can't stop doing this. It's unbelievable. I'm super passionate about it. And I'm bringing super back because I love that word. I'm just so having fun, and I'm having a blast. And I hope people who come to us, you know, they have that blast too, because what a great way to give someone an experience and make them happy. And so they don't feel like, oh, this is another person who wants to sell me something. That's not the goal here.
What, and one of the last questions I want to ask you is just sort of like you know, we're in San Diego, and, you know, this is a very unique community. You know, San Diego's known for a lot of things. It's, you know, we have a city here. We have the beach culture. You know, a lot of people consider it to be one of the better places to live in California. When you look at San Diego, when you look at living in this community, sort of, does that ever influence your writing, or like, sort of, what is the significance of living in this community to you?
The significance of living in San Diego is, I feel like I'm on vacation every day. And people are so nice. And I think that helps me to be calmer, you know, and it helps me to write better books. I love San Diego. I love driving around. There's always something new to discover. There's a lot of history here too. There's a lot to explore. We explored everything, every park, every zoo, everywhere we went, you know, like hundreds of times in the beginning, because it just never gets old.
No, it doesn't.
There's so much to see, different weather, different plant life. And again, just the way people interact. They're nice to you. They're calm. And it's so refreshing to have nice people around.
Yeah, it is. It is. I want to ask you, like, and this is sort of off the topic of the book, but sort of in terms of like in the theme of San Diego and sort of just society and that sort of thing, I always feel like authors have, you know, unique perspective about sort of the progress of society, the progress on things like social issues. You know, San Diego is a great city, as you mentioned, but we're also, there's a dark side, which is, you know, social issues such as homelessness, poverty. You know, there's issues with the border. There's you know, issues with pollution. There's all sorts of problems that San Diego is sort of confronting as time goes on. And I'm curious to know, like, as an author, like, do you sort of, does that sort of like good and dark side of a community sort of bleed into your work at all? Or like, do you, I'm sure you must have like opinions about sort of the social issues of the day that confront our city, that confront our community, and like, what does that look like to you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a firm believer to influence readers. I don't like to preach. So when you read the first book, you encounter refugees, right? And that was something that left a big imprint on my soul when I saw this article back in 2012. You know, about the refugee camp, how they were placed in a place that was no country land. It was no one's country. So they were specifically put in a place where they can be forgotten. And I remember that left a big shock in my soul, because how can you forget a group of people? So I don't like preaching, as I said. So when you read about it, I always encourage readers to think and see what they, you know, start noticing things. And what is your opinion? What do you think that we can do together as a community? Maybe I'll inspire them to go vote, right? That's the best thing we can do, go vote. And the duality of society, I don't believe in utopia. It's not gonna happen. It's just how humans are, because we have duality to ourselves. And if we don't have the negative, we can't enjoy the positive. So we have to have a certain duality. We have to have that push and pull, which is actually also one of the theme in the book, so that you get to that balanced state. It's very important to find what works, and yes, to look at these topics, look at these issues, and try to solve it. Do not ignore it. have a conversation, have community built around it, find a way to support each other.
Last question I want to ask you before I let you go is, you've talked about wanting to write until the end and sort of, what you want to do with the series, founding a multimedia franchise, like all these admirable goals. But at the end of the day, like beyond like just this series or any particular book you've written, like sort of what do you want your legacy as an author and as a human being to be? Like when people like think about you and hopefully, you'll be writing books for another 50, 60 years, but like what do you want people to like think about you? Like what do you want people to remember about you as time goes on, as your books go into history? Like what do you want your legacy to look like?
I really hope my legacy looks like that there are a lot of readers, especially, girls who were inspired to follow their dream, whatever that dream looked like, to inspire others to start on their writing journey. No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, don't ever stop. To keep going, follow your dream, follow your passion. If I have just one person come to me and tell me that they followed their goal, whatever that looks like, I would die happy.
I love that. So yeah, as we mentioned before, the Last Lumenian series has 3 parts so far out. We have the Last Lumenian, True Terran, Proud Pata, and then we have the Meddling Mages?
Meddling Mages.
Meddling Mages coming out in December. So really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to reading the whole series. And I'm a fast reader, so I think I can do it. So I'm going to zoom through that. But thank you so much for the interview. I really enjoy you coming on, and thanks for reaching out and helping set this up.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you for having me. It means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you, guys.
This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks again to our sponsors, MaxLux Media at maxluxmedia.com and Dorado Nutrition at doradonutrition.com. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the show. See you next time. Stay classy, San Diego.